Let's call this redistricting meeting to order. Rich Johnson, I'm the chair. We're first going to do a roll call. So to my left.
Matt Bergen.
Pat Richardson.
To my right.
Paul Thompson.
Lance Johnson.
Okay, we have a quorum. We can go. We're going to go over agenda. It was basically new maps. And for the people watching, we had to do new maps because there was a little glitch in the where everybody was, and particularly District 4 and District 1. So we'll get to that later. So the agenda is, if everyone's did a new map, IT is going to go over those. We'll show them, and you can go over what you did and why you did it. So does everyone approve of? I don't think we're not going to vote today on which map. It'll be, of course, we've been hit with this data change, so we'll do it on the next meeting, but at least we'll have all the maps for you to look at by tomorrow, I believe. IT is going to have it, so you can take a look at it. And then the next meeting, we will do a vote on what we're going to do.
So I move to accept the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, ayes have it. Motion carries. Next, the minutes, I looked at them, they look fine. We had, the start time was a little delayed because of Lance and his other stuff, but they look good. The content's there, so do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
Accept the minutes of October 6th.
Do I hear a second? All those in favor of the minutes say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. No nays, ayes have it. So, getting back to our first subject, we had to redo our maps because the data it didn't change the total population. All those numbers are the same, except there was some changes that were found. So, Eric, if you want to quickly go over what happened, and then we can talk about our lead-in statement from Matt for the verbiage. So, Eric.
So what we discovered was that the maps were showing the incorrect boundary between districts 1 and 4, and there's a long history of how that occurred. Prior to the 2013 redistricting board, what is currently precincts 806, 811, and 804 were only 2 precincts. 806, which is what it is now in addition to the base, and 8004, which is what it is now in addition to this portion south of the base. Prior to the 2013 redistricting commission, due to population and balancing people at polling places, a third precinct was created, 0811, which contains both the base and south. It was carved out of these 2 other existing precincts. When the redistricting commission met in 2013, they put in their report that all of 811, the newly formed precinct, should fall in District 4. But the previous district line followed between the 2 precincts along the south edge of the base. And the map that was published with the report did not update that district line. And so the maps that have been used and were thus used and checked against for this commission can propagated on that error of showing the district line continuing along the south end of the base. And so the numbers that were initially given you as far as the population of 4 and 1, basically about 2,800 people living in this section below the base were attributed to District 1 instead of properly attributed to District 4. So as you said, all the overall population numbers are the same. The numbers within each census block are the same. It was simply which district they were attributed to. And elections checked, and in their election software that creates the ballots, everybody within that district was in the correct precinct. So at no time did this affect any voters or any change. It was simply the visual representation over the last 9 years that showed that precinct line in the incorrect place. So thankfully we were able to catch that and hopefully still give you enough time to make your decision.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you for catching that pre-draft decision. That was much appreciated.
So before we go any further, why don't you just put up the verbiage that Matt had,
Yes.
the county lawyer, put together, kind of like how are we doing what we're doing, and we're basically we had legal guidance, and this is what we're following. So when we go to the public and they ask, why did you do that? And we'll say, well, we're trying to follow this kind of plan to do all these different readjustments. So it's online. Anyone watching can read this, and you can see what our objective is. So we'll leave it up for a little bit,
Now, I would like to
unless you want to read it.
come to agreement. So this was a draft that I put out. I try to capture, what we've gone off so far to get to where we are and where we desire to be. But with respect to the objective considerations, that was the prioritization that I used. So obviously not necessarily reflective on you all. But if we have a difference of opinion, or as we're refining and fine tuning and finalizing this final draft, I think that there would be value in us agreeing to that prioritization, or if there's changes to be made to the prioritization, because that can help not settle a dispute per se, but it gives us that now we're all going down the same path to get to the common objective.
So are you saying that where you have additional objectives, that number 1 is the highest priority, and that would have to be addressed first? Or are they all part of additional considerations depending on what we find as we work through?
So so the first one, because we've heard a couple times based off previous case law, and the commonality in the using of natural boundaries, that for me was my number 1, because that's seems to be the most arguable case to stand behind should there be any disagreement. 2 was, for me, to get to as close to absolute zero, exceeding the 10% guidance. 3 was minimizing the changes. But now, seeking further understanding of, the definition of impact with respect to these maps, that may drop down the list for me. And then, based off our conversation last week, extending the abutting districts to include 3 and 4. 3 and 4. There's a typo there. Should say 3 and 4. There's no District 5. For ease and fairness of future redistricting requirements. So those are the things that I took into consideration to develop my map. Again, this is a draft. This was me personally, but I think if we can come to agreement on how we prioritize these, then it'll help us collectively come up with a final draft to present.
The only thing that I would question would be the cases where you're mentioning future, because we did get a response to a question last time that we really have to deal with what is now and not speculate on the future. But, so for example, on 2, I'm fine up to 10, not only obtain as close to an equal distribution of population regarding the 10% guidance, something like that. I'm just a little concerned that by talking about future fluctuation, it opens a door for people to have expectations that we're going to be actually studying or looking at planning and zoning and things like that.
I understand that completely. So the initial conversation with not focusing on future data, so we're not speculating that any respective district as it was originally or as we propose it to be, we're not taking that into consideration, based off current rate of growth, building permits approved, et cetera. So this is basically saying that any district can fluctuate in any direction. They can gain population or lose population, but we can still maintain a relatively equal distribution for the out years, so beyond the body of this board. So the objective of attempting to get to absolute zero was just so that any one of these districts could go up or down, and we're still within that threshold. But it wasn't, there was no consideration or speculation taken if any individual district will go up or down in population. This broadly supports any district going up or down and still keeping a relatively close balance.
I mean, I'm using what the lawyers told us, be within, 10% or so. I mean, that's directly from the lawyer. That's what, and it's nice to use, if we can, natural boundaries. I mean, I did it in my maps, but, sometimes you can't. So I don't want this to hold us fixed. The only thing that's fixed right now is the 10%. We'll vote, we already know that. But this is a nice guideline, but I don't want it to hold us to the fire, because sometimes, when you start doing these maps, you can't get it exact. Though I did pretty good, though. You wait till you see my map, you'll like it.
Can't wait.
But I would say, I don't necessarily want to vote to pin us down. At least we are pinned down right now with the 10%. And, and like yourself, I like to get down to 0 too, and I did pretty well. But I would say, let's take a look at what all the people have done. And, these are the criteria you're going to be weighing anyway when you look at these different maps anyway. So that's already going to give you, like, hey, I like this guy. Or you like your map better than everybody else. So at least, do we all agree, at least we're still attacking or going for the 10%, because that's what we were instructed to by legal, St. Mary's County legal. And this is a nice guideline, but I don't want to pin us down. Because Lance, even you've probably seen stuff where you like to do it, but you can't. So.
I guess I see the additional objective considerations. We'll probably reorder them based on the map we generate.
Sure.
If these are our considerations, we'll probably have to
in
re-rank them for the map at the end.
You're going to look at the maps, and you're going to use this probably as a guideline, because we've already agreed to, natural boundaries and doing stuff like that. So this is going to give you kind of a scoring when you start looking at these different maps, which ones you like.
Right.
And then
All I was trying to say was, like, for item 3, maybe we decide that minimizing changes, the final map maybe minimizes changes, therefore we bump it up to 2 in the list,
Sure.
just so people see what the kind of the order how we attacked the problem.
Right.
And we can refine the wording here too.
If posed the question, how'd you get here, it would be
Right.
nice to be able to show objective criteria that we based
Right, and it's right here. It's like,
configuration on.
we are going to for a lot of these, so that I don't want that to pin us down. Though I am going by that, natural boundaries and trying to get to small as I can for every district. But,
So I think we're good on item 1, but after that, everything's in dispute.
correct. Correct.
Is it maybe in the title, additional objective considerations taken by the board? Does make it sound like we have voted on this or taken action. Is it more, to get what you were saying, Rich, is it more
A guidance.
guidelines followed by the
Yes.
board?
That'd be probably better, instead of pinning us.
Without saying that one is a priority over
Correct.
the others?
Correct, yes. So we're not going to, they all add to a final score on what you like, or what all the board likes, but, we're not going to be, pinned down to it. At least we are pinned down by the 10%. We are doing that. So how about next we start looking at the maps, but just to, Eric described what happened with the data. We didn't lose any data, it wasn't put in the right place border-wise. But to give the viewer an idea of what we had to do with our maps, District 4 had about 5,023 population had to lose in comparison to the average of all the other districts. But once Eric found that issue with the borders, it's now 7,641. So we had to redo our maps to compensate for that, 2,796 extra people that were now in 4 that we weren't aware of. So I guess next we'll just go over our maps and you can explain what you did and why you did it. So I guess we'll start with Matt, if you want to go first. Doesn't matter, I can go first if you want. What, you want to do it?
Happily.
Okay.
And then, Eric, if you would mind, can you just show the total population? So this map reflects, it actually improved the delta from my previous map. So right now, it's, District 1 is the highest, District 3 is the lowest. The difference between the two is 378 people. Utilizing natural boundaries, utilizing natural boundaries, I took 4 up 235 northbound side, District 2, 235 southbound side, tried to use some of the major roads and highways to dissect respective maps. Initially, it threw me off pretty, considerably, but again, thank goodness it was caught prior to our bringing a draft to the community when they show up. So well within the threshold for, for total population over 18 and voter population, registered voters, equal distribution of polling places. There were some changes to existing districts, but, again, with further understanding of the definition of impact, I wasn't as concerned with that. And then having 4 be able to now abut to 3 allows for this to be a much easier process moving along.
Anybody have any questions on Matt?
Did you make any changes from your previous map, or were you already?
Did, he grabbed
what
up
were they?
Great Mills area.
Significant changes.
Okay.
You see, he also, he took some of 1 in the north. If I had a mouse, I could do it, but I'm relying on Eric to, yeah, there you go. See, he took that area.
Okay. Got you.
And the other area down Great Mills, he did that.
Yeah, after the latest change, it was even more difficult to remain within existing districts to
Right. You'll see mine.
population distribution objective. But it's close, it's concise.
Okay. What did the register, did you go through all, I just saw, okay, total pop. Okay, that's, well, now what's the other one look like? Okay. Well, I'll look at these numbers together and plug them in, but it's probably pretty close to 0, looks like. For percent wise. All right, I'm good. Anybody else have any questions for Matt? I guess, Pat, you're next.
Okay, I went back and I'm going to start at the bottom and work up. So I put Park Hall, St. Mary's City, I put that whole section where the current map says it is, even though we understand now that that was not correct. I still felt that that area could fit back there. I'm going to jump around a little bit. In the north, I stayed on one side of the natural boundary and moved down a little bit further, closer to Oakville. I also took, I think it's 601, 602, 603, I took the 600, or the precinct 6s, several of them, and moved them into 2. And I do have Wildwood in 4. I felt it was important to keep the communities together, so that was my driving force when I went through. And I was a little concerned that due to population, some of them cover a very large geographic area, and 4 now covers a very small geographic area, but that was not a requirement of our design. So I stayed within the 10%. 2 now is my highest district. And I think 1 is the lowest, even with the addition. And then, Eric, if we could look at the registered voters. It's similar pattern. I felt that it was important to try to get all 4 districts in population as close to the average as possible, but that was not my only concern or my overriding concern. I was more concerned with the characteristics of the populations and the districts.
Anybody have any questions for Pat's maps?
What's the dividing line in Wildwood? Is that the precinct?
Let's see, Eric, if you can. There were 1 or
Yeah.
2 places where I had to split. I think I split 1 precinct, possibly 2, in order to get the numbers closer.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions for Matt? You're looking at it, so you must have a question.
Oh, no, I'm just,
Oh, you look pretty intent. So if anybody has any other questions, I'll go next. You can bring up my map. That's Lance Johnson. That's my brother.
Oh, sorry, I agree.
I know we look similar. So let me go through my attack of what I did. So my first attack was, we talked about Chestnut Hills and Ridge, keeping them together or putting them together. I kept them both into 1 because most of the population was in 1 originally, 524 population. So instead of pushing it out into 2, I just kept it in 1. So that's what I did. That was my first attack. Next, I want to attack District 4 because there was a lot of extra people in there. So the first thing I did, I took similar to, I think, Pat or Matt, you did the same thing, similar. I took section of Great Mills and also just across Route 5. It didn't make sense having the other one across Route 5, this little area. So I brought that into 1 from 4, but that still wasn't enough. And so the next thing I did, I took Wildwood and put that all from 4 into 2. And also of course, it kept them all together, the entire community, because that's the other thing we're looking at, trying to keep everybody together. And similar to what Matt did, I'm not copying you, Matt, but I did something similar to you. I went all the way up on the right side of 235 and put that into 4. And once I did all that, I gave a little bit on the top back to 3, because 3 has been low overall, and not many people butt up against 3. So, but once I did that, there was a imbalance. So I got 4 okay, but what happened was I had an imbalance between 1 and 3, and they don't butt up against each other. So what I had to do is I cut into, basically had, take 2, grab into, can you see right past Wildwood? Can you zoom in right there? Yeah. So again, kind of like following borders like we've been doing, I extended 2 past Wildwood until I got the numbers I needed to compensate between 1 and 3. And basically I'm stealing from one and bringing to the other. So, and then after that, I adjusted, if you go all the way back to, zoom out, there you go. Go between the border of 3 and 2. And I basically grabbed some of 2 to put into 3 to level it out. And once I did that, there was some minor tweaking I had to do around the Chestnut Hills to get near to 0. But my final numbers, since I did do my numbers, population for the percent was like 0.069 to 3.39%. So go down the numbers. District 1 basically was minus 578 in population, meaning they could absorb some. District 2 is 250 that they could absorb, and 3 and 4 were like 424 and 404. So pretty close to 0. Same thing with voters. Voters greater than 18, I had from 0.43% to 5.5%. Registered voters, I was 0.32 to 6.43. But other than that, everything was under 10, and of course, population was the best, and that's what we've been aiming at. So that was my attack. I try to, like I said, use borders like we not agreed to, but kind of a guideline, so that's sort of what I did. So anybody have any questions, or Paul, you got any questions? It was something similar to what Matt did, but then with the extra, over 2,000 extra in 4, I had to do some other stuff, like everyone else had to do some other stuff in the maps. Any questions, comments? Okay, I guess you're next, Paul.
Okay, yeah, after the change this time around, trying to figure out how to make this work. The first thing I did was, we got to move over 7,000 people out of District 4. So right off the bat, I moved Wildwood into District 2, which is a little over almost 8,000 people. So then after that, I had to balance out. And so to balance out, I pulled people from 2 along the edge there. I pulled people from 2 into 3. And that was just to bring up the population in 3. Trying to use natural boundaries. Actually, I started using the creeks more because the creeks don't split neighborhoods. People usually don't build across the creeks. So that's why things aren't as rectangular anymore. And then, so I only added people to 3. 2, 4, it was all subtraction, just Wildwood. And then for 1, it was just, I added in all of Chestnut Ridge there, and then the south side of Great Mills Road, just to add a few more people.
Right, I saw that too. It did make sense on that one side.
The net result is there's a big difference between 2 and 1. It's a 9% difference with this map. But I think there's still places to work. Obviously we could rework it a little bit. I was trying not to break up Wildwood, but there are 3 precincts in there. So if that's something that we could kind of attack at a little bit, obviously that can kind of maybe balance things out. Balance this map out a little more quickly by moving Wildwood around a little bit. Any questions?
Did you go through the other, so that's total pop?
I just want to say one more thing, and I did actually try to not change as little as possible. I kept the boundaries as is, except for, like in 2, I moved 2 precincts. I tried to keep it big chunks. Obviously, it gets a little messy between 2 and 3, but I really tried to keep the changes minimal to make this happen. That's why my percentage is so high. So if we rank that higher,
I don't know,
that
Paul.
would be a vote for it. Yeah. Okay.
I guess no more questions for Paul. I guess next is Lance.
Yeah, I have not made any changes to mine. I had a death in the family over the weekend, so I hadn't really gotten a chance to do much. But can you look at my total numbers from when they made that change? Or was it in District 4? Did that change anything?
Hang on.
Other Johnson, here you go.
There we go.
Because really my main focus was trying to balance out, the total population. So if
Oh, I think I'll have to go to our versions because I think I had, you'd asked to reset this map, so. Your previous version, is that what you wanted to see?
Yeah, because I wanted to see with that change, that it just totally blow out all my numbers. Did one just get lopsided?
This version has not been updated though with the change, since these were historic versions. I didn't want to go back and change them. But it would, that change would add 2,800 people to your District 4 as it stands here, and remove that many from, so basically it would look the same. 1 would drop and 4 would go up to be about equal with the others.
So if anything, it would bring all of the districts more in
Please
line.
speak into the microphone.
She's yelling at,
Sorry. So if that's the case, then if it went in District 4, it might balance because originally I had 4 a little less. So if that's the case, then it would bring a little more into 4 and kind of bring that more in line with the other districts. So I
Yes,
might-
it would bring 4 up closer in line, but it would take 1 down to be a little out of line. It would basically swap
Yep.
1 and 4 as far as their relative heights.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really make any much changes, or didn't make any changes, but my whole concept was trying to basically just by the total population. I didn't really even pay attention to the number of registered voters that were in there. I didn't pay attention to any other thing other than looking at a contiguous, trying to keep contiguous borders as close as possible, without making it look too weird. And so originally I just took a little bit out of, originally I put some more back into 2, so it was a little bit more contiguous as it was before, which cut a little bit out of 4. But in order to made 2 so heavily lopsided, I took a line and went straight down and kind of stayed all the way down to Britton Bay, giving population back to 3, or giving 3. And then I came in to District 1, kind of went through Great Mills, and then kind of came down to where I think it was it Crestview neighborhood down there. So the whole idea was to kind of really more just take and have a balance of population as close as possible between all 4. And I was with 4 initially. It had it like it had less population, but if this is the case where that some from 1 goes back to 4 and it kind of evens it out, it probably solidifies what I submitted initially.
so once he gets his map updated, you want to tweak it a little bit, or?
I'll look at it. Like I said, if those numbers actually shift and it kind of balance it out, because that's what I really like about Matt's map, and I like about your map, and I mean everybody's trying to keep each district in around the same, with less than that 10%, as close to 0 as possible. I think that's good. So I have to take a look at it again, but.
And I can do that. I can take your version 1 and
Okay.
just make the change.
Just make that one change.
And reload it as your version 2,
Okay.
essentially.
All right.
Yeah, your bar chart's just going to go like that.
Yeah.
Just gonna,
Yeah, but I'm hoping that, like I said, it'll just look a little bit more in line, and then I'll see if I want to play with it some more. But for the most part, I might be a little more happier with it.
okay. Anybody have any questions for, well, Lance is going to be tweaking anyway, so. All right, so any other things to go over? I guess we're going to be taking a look at the maps that Eric is going to put on for all versions, so we can take a look at them in addition to what we just saw. We have a meeting Monday, the 18th, where we're going to vote for a map. I mean, we already voted before that we were going to do a final, get an answer. So I don't think we have to vote on that again, except we got delayed because of the data issue.
So how's that vote going to go? We'll have,
We could raise hands.
Five.
We could raise hands. I mean, 3 is a majority, so, or you can just run through each one and score it, and just how many people like it and how many people don't.
or is there any one of ours that we collectively feel is closest, and then we can collectively fine tune it to something that we
Yeah.
can all get behind? I don't think it necessarily has to be, only one out of the 5. I'd like the final map that we bring to have the backing of everybody and input from everybody and be representative of all of our inputs instead of, that's just my recommendation, instead of just rubber stamping Matt's or Lance's or Paul's or Richard's, and this is
Well, I
our
mean,
one.
Eric's going to put the updated maps on there, we can take a look at, and then you're going to know what you like and don't like, in addition to yours. I mean, you may like mine, I don't know, I may like yours. Yours and mine were a little bit similar in different things.
Yeah, they were close.
Very close. And I
But
didn't
unless
call you.
our
so
approach doesn't
just-
align to what other people like, it's going to be difficult to.
I was just working the numbers like you. It's like, okay, we got a big problem with 4, in addition with the issue with the boundaries, and now we had to actually do more.
Gotcha.
So I think I'll get close to the mic so I don't get yelled at. So let's take a look at what Eric puts on there, and then you're going to know what maps you like, and we'll come back Monday, and hopefully we all can get behind one and maybe do a little tweaking, and then we say, yeah, we all like it.
I like Matt's idea about trying to find one that has emerged as the strongest so far, but maybe we would like a little bit of change, or if that's possible. I think that gives us a structure. I don't want to just review and, pros and cons again. I'm of the opinion right now where ultimately the voters are the voice. That's who matters in all of this. So we'll get that feedback when we go to public forum. I like many aspects of your map. I'm still uncomfortable with going all the way up through Hollywood, through Oakville, because they are intact communities that have been around a long time. And if there were a way to even just come down from Oakville and maybe pick up population somewhere else, that would cause me to lean more in
Right.
that direction.
Yeah, and I completely
And maybe
understand.
it's not possible.
Or,
but-
and I kind of go back, because I think, again, impact is fairly subjective term. So if this impacted more than somebody getting an updated voter registration card, if they, like, new location or they have to change, that's where I'm going to continue to seek clarification, so I have a firm understanding of when we say how many people are impacted, well, in what way and to
Right.
what extent are they impacted? Because for me personally, if you told me I had to drive to a new location, or, this is my spot, I'm used to it, or, any other way than, hey, you've got a new voter ID coming in the mail, then I'm probably not going to be upset or disrupted in any way. So I guess maybe we can also work to seek further clarification on exactly how, for the individuals, because individuals will have their respective district changed. It's just, it has to happen to meet the 10% rule. And for those individuals that are impacted, to what extent are they impacted? And because we need to be able to clearly define that. If someone says, well, you've changed my district, how dare you? I want to be able to say,
We asked those same questions to the
second.
board, the BOE.
hopefully be able to tell them, look, we understand this is the impact to your change. And if that's minimal or hyper minimal, then I suspect we're like, oh, never mind, we're good. But if we're telling them this changes things immensely, then I want to take that into more consideration. Please.
Want me to respond?
Yeah.
So, Neil Murphy, Deputy County Attorney. So, for example, if somebody was originally in 4 but is now in 2, for example, it means that a different county commissioner would be representing them, and they would be voting for a different county commissioner, in effect.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but every person that votes for all 4 county commissioners as well as commissioner president, correct?
It's the whole
As
county.
of right
The whole
now, as
county
it's-
does it, so yeah.
Yeah, as it
It's-
stands right now,
So,
you have
right.
the ability, regardless of your district, to vote for every county commissioner in each of the 4 districts, to include a 5th vote for commissioner president.
Right, the only thing different is if you are running, you have to be from that district, which is what
And you're-
our
and
maps
you're
will do.
Represented by, if you
You're
change
represented
districts.
by all, sure,
Right.
but the one is for
I get
that
it.
district, right?
So it
that
wouldn't,
would change
it
it.
wouldn't take away someone's ability to vote for a county commissioner in a respective district. It would just change their respective district and associated county commissioner.
I look at it a little bit differently because depending on who decides to run, we all could be voting for different people than we have. I mean, that's something that can change that we have no control over. But what concerns me is that when you travel that far and you cut across that many different communities, I think it would be very difficult for one commissioner who represents all of that to meet the needs of Lexington Park, of Hollywood, of Oakville. But maybe the public doesn't see it that way, and it's not an issue. I'm looking at a representative, no matter who it is, a representative's ability to address the needs of the constituents in that district. They're having to do 2 things. They're having to look out for the county needs and also for the needs of the constituents in their district. So that's what makes me feel a little concerned that that's such a huge grouping that I wonder how a representative could really address the needs of all the different constituents in that grouping.
But currently, District 3, you got to take into consider 7th District, where I grew up, down an avenue in Bushwood, but then you've got Country Lakes and Mechanicsville. That's, I mean, in terms of, whatever you'd like to compare with respect to differences in communities and geographic locations, that's as broad as a disparity as what we're representing in the elongated 4.
I would say that, but some things can't be helped. 3 probably has to be the way it is, but 4, if you're trying to keep that, more community-centric thing going, that we're kind of messing that up. And we're sacrificing that here, where we don't have to. I don't think I think you're arguing it's not ideal that District 3 is so large and carries such a big space. So I guess what I would say, well,
Is it a bad
then let's
thing?
not do it to 4.
Is it a bad thing for a county commissioner to take multiple counties and neighborhoods and people into consideration when they go about their duties?
I think they do that anyway,
Right.
but it's more from the standpoint of, is this person who's from my district, does he represent my problems? That's the person I would call first.
Understood.
I wouldn't call, if I was in District 1, I wouldn't call someone in District 3. I can, but I would gravitate toward the District 1 commissioner.
And so for more broad election impacts, I think we're going to try and get the election board here next week to answer any more specific questions that you may have.
So they were here last week,
Right.
and the answer was you get an updated voter ID, or
Gotcha.
voter registration card in the mail.
Well, they also said that they're the ones that decide who changes where they go vote, not us. We just do maps.
Yeah, and the commissioner districts won't affect that.
Right.
This really is for the voting pool.
Right.
So is the question here, the difference between people that live in, like, say, Oakville and that section between, like, say, down to Hollywood, it goes down into 4, is it the difference in that district's needs or concerns that we feel like we need to keep that with a specific commissioner. Like right now, Oakville down to Hollywood, if that stayed in 2, yes, they have the same commissioner, but does it, I guess the question I'm asking is, if you make that contiguous to go over, was that 3-Notch Road or whatever, are those people in Oakville so much different in their community that being kind of lumped together with Hollywood or California is outside, I mean, would be outside of what they would, like,
I don't think so.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, it looks, on this map, it looks like it's a big difference, but, you know, I drive that road, I'll drive that road when I go home. It's not that many miles.
And I'll say, like, I completely understand what you're saying, but what I would want this board to stay as far away from as possible, to think that we are grouping people by anything else but where they live. Their wants, needs, and desires kind of leads to, and again, in no way, shape, or form do I think this is what's I'm thinking about when we meet with the public. I don't want this to be taken in consideration, different demographics or cultures or areas, or, you know, Hollywood, understand, you know, you probably got a little bit more land, Waterman, things like that. But to take communities into account and try to draw lines around it, I think is a very scary thing. And that's not the intention at all. What I understand what you're saying is that county commissioner has to look over that community, and to have, you know, that disparity in not only geographic length, but just the types of, say, properties, property values, land, trades, jobs, average income, you know, across that spectrum. I understand that's what you're saying. I think we have the conversation. Do we want to draw lines by community types? Because I suspect these gentlemen to the left would tell us to err on the side of caution.
I don't think the community types is what I was trying to say,
Okay.
if that's what you got from that. It's more like, if you can think of it like Leonardtown, it sort of radiates out, right? You don't go west of Leonard, people only from Leonardtown only go west, right? It sort of radiates out. So, I mean, Hollywood was already cut in half. You know, we've been living with that for 10 years, so that's a done deal, right? But I guess it's more reluctance to do that again. And just, it is sort of like I had reservations about moving District 3 into the Oakville area because, you know, people kind of gravitate around schools. You know, that's sort of who you see, your neighbors. And it's just sort of, when you keep stretching it out, you'll get to the point where the two people will never see each other, right? I mean, I know District 3 is big, but, you know, there's a chance you'll see your county commissioner in your district, in your community, if that community is more compact. I guess I'm worried about the lack of compactness at the expense of evening the population.
Yeah, and I was simply speaking to perception, not
Okay.
intent. No, I get what you're saying 100%.
Any other discussions, questions? Everyone's quiet. Okay, so you're going to have, when you think you'll have all these versions online, up to date?
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning? Okay. All right, so,
Just before we stop,
here we
I'm
go.
just still trying to, obviously, next meeting is the last one we have. So coming into the meeting, where do we expect to be? Do we think we have, I know we're going to have 5 maps. They're not going to be the same.
sure.
So what's the next step? I think if we go into the Monday meeting trying to figure out what the next step is, we're going to run out of time. We either have to, are we going to vote on the maps right away and then pick the top? Or are we going to pick one and try to iterate on it to get one we're happier with? If I could go back 3 weeks, maybe I would have wished we picked a map 3 weeks ago, and we'd be on Rev 3 of it right now. And maybe one of us isn't happy, but 3 of us can live with it. I'm worried we're going to go into Monday, and it's going to feel like that's so far away when we start the meeting. I don't know how we get it done unless we're,
We're trying to narrow it down to one, kind of trying to figure out between the consensus of the five of us, which map that we can come to a consensus on. But then with that, that's not necessarily the final map that's going to, we can still make tweaks to it, right?
Yeah, it's even what Matt said,
Yeah. I mean, the idea is that we just get a consensus, and then we kind of work towards trying to make tweaks to that map so it's a win-win for everyone,
okay.
right? Is that?
So we're thinking then, like, at the meeting, like, fairly early, we're going to vote on a map.
I mean, you're going to get the maps tomorrow, you can start looking at them.
I know, but what I'm saying is, when do we start this iterative process? We can't be voting on the map at the end of next meeting. We have to do it early, and then we're going to spend the rest of the meeting trying to tweak it?
So, I mean, I would almost say I could see value in voting on a map today. And then if Eric can distribute that map in an editable format, we can make some small changes that are reflective of, things that we've prioritized as higher, and then spend next meeting finalizing a collective draft. Because ideally, when we present this, I'd like for us all to feel like we had some say on whatever we put in front of the public. And it's in some way, shape, or form reflective.
Until Eric gets it on there, I don't think we can make that decision
and I
right
guess,
now.
so I guess maybe if we just come in with the mindset of we're going to vote early, to almost like what you're saying is, at the end of this meeting, we vote on a map. Next meeting, we're going to vote on the map because we've had time to do our homework. That we're going to come in, vote on a map, and then iterate from there.
And we're just, and then we're going to vote by whichever map gets the most hands gets.
I'd say use your criteria, do a score in each one. Oh, you want me to build up a score? I'm good at doing scores, data. So how about I put together maybe a scoring, and.
We can't weight the criteria because we haven't decided on.
No, I mean, but we are doing the 10%, so, but I'll try to figure something. I don't have it right now because,
I mean,
Are
I would,
we against just doing a yay, nay, up, down vote on
Or we can
each
do that.
map and figure out who gets, I don't,
And you're not allowed to vote for your own?
sure you are.
well, that pretty much gives everybody at least one.
I mean, I think everybody has put effort and intentionality into their own respective maps. But at the end of the day, we got to pick one. So ideally, we have a clear and objective method of choosing what that final one looks like. So if we'll collectively vote on one and maybe establish a tiebreaker.
Right, it's just like, when I did Chestnut Hill, Chestnut Ridge, the majority of the people were already in District 1, so I grabbed the entire side over in 2 and put it in 1, where I think someone else did that.
I did that.
So there's commonality. Same thing when I did similar to what you did. It's very similar to what I did and you did.
Yeah, I agree. Ours are
Right,
fairly
so-
close. Paul and Pat's are fairly close, and I think Lance
Right,
is
and you
kind of
have-
in the middle of the two extremes, and then
Right, like you have right here, you have District 4 grabbing that one little area that I'm pointing to. I don't have a mouse, but I did the same thing with 2. So it's similar.
well, yeah, there's definitely coming out. I guess I guess we might need methodology.
But I mean, it seems like the biggest issue with your map apparently is 4, right? 4 going all the way up that right side.
I did
is what
similar thing.
seems to, because to me, one could say that's more contiguous because 4 was kind of shaped kind of odd anyway. And then somebody can also look at it and say, well, it's not contiguous in comparison to 3. And what was 2, right? Up, when you're going east or kind of like whatever, east-west of the county or whatever.
I
But-
mean, we were discussing, the differences of people in a district. I mean, look
Yeah.
at 1.
Yeah.
Great Mills and Point Lookout.
Yeah.
That's quite different.
Yep.
In people. And, so I think it's common with all the different districts, So,
So, I mean, is the consensus that we'll be able to look at these maps tomorrow and between now and next Monday, come in with enough background to basically start to say, to try to narrow this down to one
We're
map.
going to
and then
gravitate
kinda-
somewhere, so.
Yeah, gravitate towards a map and then spend some time discussing like we have been today over which map we've chosen and trying to like figure out, okay, this is what I don't like about the map. And
Right,
maybe
it's
try
like,
to come to a
You may have
consensus.
an input that, hey, I like it, but could we agree to this?
Yeah,
Same
that's
thing
what
with
I'm saying.
Paul. Paul's going to have opinions too, and so will Pat and Matt.
Yeah.
So we might be able to come to a consensus and
But I mean, that's the idea, right?
correct.
So I would agree with trying to vote earlier in that meeting to maybe Monday if we can.
Oh, definitely have to
So
do
it
it-
gives us some time.
We have to do it Monday to get on our schedule.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I look forward to seeing the maps online. Eric, and any other questions, comments? Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved?
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Meeting's over. Aye.